Cubs and Cardinals fans, it's Wednesday, May 30th, and on this week's edition of the Team of Rivals podcast, we'll talk about the second coming of Alex Reyes, Snidely McRizzo, and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad Sly, plus a whole host of other topics too numerous to mention in this intro. And stick around for bonus content at the end of the show as we will discuss Solo, a Star Wars story. The Team of Rivals podcast starts now.
Smith corks one into right down the line. It may go. So crazy, folks. So crazy. There's a drive. Way back. It might be. It could be. Playing a high drive into left. Back goes to Craig. He's at the track. He has it. And the Cardinals world champion for 2011. A little bouncer slowly toward Bryant. He will glove it to Rizzo. It's in time. And the Chicago Cubs win the World Series.
This is the Team of Rivals podcast. No insiders, no anonymous sources, just passionate analysis from the bleacher seats. Here are your hosts, Ron Nuttall and Peter Geddes.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm not sure what's in frame here. Those of you who are listening to the audio version of this, now I'm perplexed because Pete disappeared here from the little feed, and he's showing us. Oh, okay. Well, you were a little late on that one, buddy. We might have to fix the audio in this intro. Welcome, everybody, to Team of Rivals podcast. This is episode 26 of season 2, and we've got some interesting tidbits to touch on today. Beginning with, let's just slide right into this here in a few minutes. But before we do that, Pete and Elliott are here with me, as usual, but we're on a Wednesday night due to travel schedules. Pete's delicate, brittle schedule, kind of like the Cardinals roster right now.
No, just their hitting
all night long.
Right. And special guest joining us, so we're coast to coast tonight. Adam Maurer. I should have asked you that before you. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you did.
Okay. Score one for me. I could easily screw that one up. Pete's the grammar expert here and pronunciation expert. All right, you're on mute. Can't hear you. But anyway, guys, there is very interesting happenings, and Pete was lighting up Twitter, inviting it. So let's just before we get into that, right, Adam. Why don't you tell everyone, you haven't been on our show yet, but I know you've been a listener. You reached out to us, and we're happy to have you on. So why don't you take this time right now? Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you live right now, what you do, and tell us about your Cardinal fandom.
Yes, thank you. I love your guys' show. I actually heard about your show through Two Birds on a Bat with Jim throwing you guys out there. So that was when I got really heavy into podcasting and listening to you guys and Two Birds on a Bat and Best Podcast in Baseball with Derek Gould. And then I just started listening over and over again and getting really into the specifics of the Cardinals baseball and fandom. I've been a Cardinals fan since before I can remember. I was born in '85, which wasn't a great year, not a terrible year. But,
heartbreaking. That's the first time I ever cried. First time I ever cried over baseball was that year.
By the time I was old enough to realize what happened, I was like, why? Why my year? You know, like, it's like destined to repeat itself. You know, born on that year. But I've been a Cardinals fan my whole life. My dad was born in Kirkwood, Missouri, so he's a St. Louis guy, and his father before him. And I just been following Cardinals baseball through the '90s, unfortunately, and then early 2000s, and getting up to it. Now, Cubs are actually, you know, the team that they always were on the cusp of being, but because of injuries, derailment, things like that, it set the Cubs back. But I think the Cubs-Cardinals rivalry is definitely back, and it makes baseball better, especially for the Midwest.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. We discussed it on this show before, too. I think that when you were describing the Cubs on the cusp of being good for iterations there a decade and a half ago, I think Pete's going to say maybe one name, maybe two, but he's going to say,
Mark Fryer, he would, you know, I mean.
Yeah, well, but Pete's going to tell you Dusty Baker or Andy McPhail. Just take your pick. Which one, Pete? Or is it a multitude?
Didn't have our horses.
What? Wait, say that again.
We didn't have our horses.
We didn't have our horses. Yeah, of course. I think somebody put up a picture. We found his horses. Like somebody found a horse in Chicago. Is that one of your guys on Twitter?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was.
That's what I thought. Well, Adam, it's great to have you on. What do you do? I know you live out in LA, so why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what you're doing out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm an actor and a writer. I actually just got done writing and directing my first film. We're currently editing the film right now. It's called The Grail, so I'm really excited about that, and we're hoping to have a release next year on 4/20.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, we'll have to review that, guys, after one of our shows next year. We'll have Adam on. Yeah, so it's great to have you here. Love to hear about, a little bit of the history there. I myself grew up in Central Illinois, which was right on the Cardinals DMZ. I have family members that are Cub fans. Mm-hmm. The town was split 50-50. So when it was really hot, could be painful depending on the outcome of the year, but it made it a lot of fun. Those are some of the most memorable seasons I can remember. 1989 is one. You might be too young to remember it, but they were right down to the wire to the end of the year. Cubs pulled out ahead that year, but it was one that really sticks to memory. Much like the 87 and 85 years. I'm a little bit older than you, but I was old enough to feel the pain in 85 and 87. That should have been the Cardinals, not 12th title, but they should have 12. Damn Dankinger, first base umpire, blew that call. Anyway, guys, let's get into the hot news right now. Pete, so why don't you lead us into this? Well, before you do that, right, we got business to take care of.
You have a little bit of business to take care of. For those of you watching us live right now on YouTube, you can find us everywhere at teamofrivalspodcast.com. You can also find us on Facebook by searching for Team of Rivals Podcast. We're on Twitter at Team of Rivals Pod, and also on Instagram at Team of Rivals Podcast. And for those of you watching live, you can, of course, listen again on every major podcast platform. And, of course, don't forget to visit the team store on Zazzle.
Yes. Hey, you know what? Zazzle's still on my S list.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
So I've had to, but you see what I'm wearing, right?
Yes.
I see that.
Those sons of bitches can't stop me. We're going to have it. We're going to have it one way or the other.
Another supplier, huh?
Alternate. There's always other suppliers out there that are willing. Anyway.
Actually, before I lead us into this,
yes,
the reason why we had to go Wednesday last week was I took a trip and I chalked up one more stadium on the ballpark tour to visit Globe Life Park in Arlington, Texas. And I got to tell you, gentlemen, one of the nicer parks I've ever been to.
Does it look just like it does on the movie The Rookie?
No, it looks better in person. I will tell you this. The one thing that you don't see when you're walking up to Globe Life Park, because they never show it in the beauty shots, is it's one of the few parks that I've ever been around that actually has green space around it, right?
Yeah.
Normally, you either have a park that's sandwiched within a neighborhood like Wrigley or Fenway, or else you've got a park that's out in the middle of parking lots.
Mm-hmm. What is it called now? Cellular One. What is it called now?
Guaranteed Rate Field.
Jesus, seriously, Guaranteed Rate Field. Hey, do you guys remember the movie Basketball?
Yeah.
The logo is a down arrow, which is absolutely the right thing for the. So a couple of highlights of that game, and guys, you already know most of this because I shared it with you while I was at the game. But I got to bring home Han Gallo.
That's pretty cool.
Amazing. Star Wars weekend. There were all kinds of members of the 501st all over, including a very fat Mandalorian. But I got another bobblehead for the collection. So Yellow made it all the way back from Dallas with me. Also, I got to see Bartolo Colon's bullpen walk after he finished warming up. And
how slow was it?
Took a couple minutes, man.
I love that guy, though. I mean, I do.
Oh my God, it was awesome. It was awesome. And then finally, I'm walking around the concourse a little bit before start time. And I walked past this guy, and I had heard the name before. I knew he was there signing autographs, but I didn't get up. I was just taking a stroll around the concourse. And I walked past, and they're wrapping up everything in the autograph session. I got to meet Mitch Williams, the Wild thing.
No. Yeah, that would actually be kind of cool to meet him.
And it was right at the end, so there was nobody around there. It was basically just, I don't know, his girlfriend or his daughter or whoever was talking to him. Stopped. I turned around, I walked back, and she stopped mid-conversation. She said, "Go ahead." And I said, "Mitch, I just wanted to thank you for the 89 season. That was loads of fun." And I patted him on the shoulder, and then I just kept on walking. And he was like, "Thanks a lot, man. I had a lot of fun that year too." I said, "I bet you."
Yeah, that was an interesting year. I know that guy. I mean, he was like, he looked like a discus thrower when he finished pitching, where his body just kept flailing off into another direction. Like ball went one way, body went the other way. It's just amazing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's my weekend. So I chalked up another park on the tour day ballparks. So, so let's get right into it. I lit up Twitter, but I think it was doing a good enough job on its own in game one of this series when Anthony Rizzo decided to break up a double play opportunity at home plate, and Cardinals Twitter lost its freaking mind.
Yeah.
And I have to say, if things don't work out for Anthony Rizzo from the baseball or the foundation or any of his other endeavors standpoint, he doesn't have to worry about where he's going to live, because clearly he is living rent-free in Cardinals fans' heads.
Yeah.
Dexter Fowler. I was scrolling through Twitter as going on. Dex slides into home plate, apparently made a nice slide at home, and one of the first things that pops up on Twitter as I was following it was, "Nice slide, Dex. See what happens when you don't have to take out the catcher?"
Completely different context, right?
Yeah, completely different context.
Yeah.
Absolutely irrelevant to the conversation, but Anthony Rizzo has a home.
Well, so I'm not sure what part of that you were following on Twitter, but I'll just say this about Twitter. You guys know how I feel about Twitter. I mean, for some people, it does great. It does great at putting the word out, promoting things. But the problem with Twitter is you get a collection of whoever you get on there commenting about things. So I tend to ignore it for the most part. Pete has trouble doing that.
I'll slide in a tweet and then leave and not come back to it the next day to see what kind of shit came up.
Because Elliott slides in the tweet. I don't know that the tweet's gone up because I'm behind on the feed. And then a response comes back and I'm like, what? You're just calling us out? Okay, fine. Here we go.
Yeah. Well, whenever I could just imagine there's a sound whenever Pete enters Twitter, leaves a comment, you hear a grenade hit the ground, and it just goes ding, 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 and then the fallout a day later is pretty hilarious. But I tend to let a lot of shit on Twitter just slide off my back. But so I'm not that active on it. I'll stick to the old man Facebook for now. That seems to work a little better for me. I think the buttons are easier to use too.
No,
they're like the big
Twitter.
large buttons. Oh, go ahead, Adam. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I'm just saying I stay away from Twitter, like Trump should do.
I think we all probably agree on that one. But okay, so yeah, Twitter. There's I try not to paint a picture of a fan base based on Twitter. I mean, there's some good guys on there, and then there's also a collection of whoever, idiots that will say and do anything, take it out of context, or they respond over a headline without knowing what the story's about. I just chalk it up to that. It's much like a message board. I don't know if you've ever read it, Adam, but the St. Louis Post-Dispatch has Cards Talk. It is a viperous hornet's nest of Cardinal fans hating other Cardinal fans. It's a contest of who's smarter and who's got it figured out and who has the better argument. It's like scholars arguing over some hot debate of a topic. Is Pluto a planet or not? That's basically what happens to a Cardinals topic.
Well, they're more worried about spelling and typos and the actual context of what they're talking about.
Yeah, they are. Or if somebody loses an argument, it just resorts to just name calling. I only tuned in there for a period of time because literally there are people that are watching the headline, especially like around the hot stove season, right? Where sometimes you can catch things first on a message board or on Twitter before you ever will through checking out ESPN. So I'd have it on there, but as soon as you start reading down a chain, it's just, hey, maybe what do you guys think about this trade? And then the next response is, you're an idiot for thinking about that trade. It's like it gets horrendous after that. But anyway, let's get into the play, Pete. I don't know. Did either one of you guys pull up the rules? I want to look at the sliding rules. Do anybody have access to that?
Yeah, I can get to it, but I've covered it so many times that
I thought you had already printed it.
No, I know. Covered it so many times just watching it. Basically, this is part of the problem. There are a bunch of rules when it comes to sliding into bases and breaking up double plays. Mm-hmm. And what it says is that you can't initiate contact strictly with the intent of injury.
You can't deviate
from your original course. You can't drawing a blank on it, but ultimately what the league, and this is what frustrates me, is the umpires ruled it. They called to New York. New York upheld the call. And then the next day, the league office overturned it. And the problem with all of this is that they're trying to legislate contact out of baseball. Fine. But if you're going to do that, then you need to legislate all contact out, because what you're doing is you're leaving all of these gray areas and nobody knows what is and is not legal, right?
Yeah.
Rizzo made that play at home plate because his understanding was that was legal. And it was so borderline that the league didn't do anything about it. Didn't suspend him. They didn't fine him. They just told him, hey, you know what? That play wasn't legal. You deviated.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't do it anymore.
You're not going to be disciplined, but yeah, don't do it anymore. And then you have a play like tonight where the Pirates pitcher overslid second base, and by the letter of the rules, that should
overslid second base and tucked his shoulder to go into Javi Baez to break up that.
Have to maintain contact with the base now in order to break up a double play. And if you lose contact with the base per the rules, that's a double play. And they didn't do that in tonight's game. And that's where you're getting into all of this, and where you have people throwing out dirty player, dirty play, illegal play, legal play. If you don't get some idea of this locked down, then you're going to have problems. And I love what Doug Glanville came up with. He basically said, you know what? If this is going to be an issue, then we need to treat home plate like first base.
Well, I want to get into that in a second, Pete, because I thought that was a very interesting write-up that very interesting in theory what he was talking about turning it basically like you would first base. But before we do that, guys, I want to know from Adam's perspective, being a Cardinal fan, that play, I'm sure you've seen the replays of it. Yeah. I mean, dirty slide in your opinion?
No, I don't think so. I mean, look, when did baseball stop becoming baseball? You know, when you're taught from a young age, even like my son, he said, travel league practice right now. First thing they teach you is break up the double play. You know, like your job is to get to that base, but at the same time, it's to break up the play. I mean, do we talk about Ty Cobb and the way that he stole second base or third base or home, you know?
Or Chase Utley.
But when did baseball stop becoming baseball? You know,
Exactly when Chase and Buster Posey got injured.
When Buster Posey started acting like a pussy and couldn't take a hit. I mean, protect your.
But that's when the rules started.
Yeah, but he really got he was out for a while. Yeah.
And that's when you could run over the catcher. And
let's tackle
the
the catcher thing later, because I feel differently about that one. But I kind of agree with you, Adam. Even when I saw it or heard about it, I think Elliott, you sent me the first clip after I saw it coming up on the feed. I'm looking at it and going, this is baseball player instinct right here. And you're right, Adam. This is what they're trained to do. Did he go outside of a normal way he would have slid into home? Sure. But to me, it's like, I'm not going to look at that and go, well, what a Bush League dirty player. I just don't agree. I know some Cardinal fans don't agree with me. Some Pittsburgh fans don't agree with me. Some other baseball fans don't agree with me. But
then they didn't play baseball.
Yeah, well, but most probably didn't. And to me, it's baseball player instinct, and it's hard to when you know a situation like that at home exists so seldom. It is difficult to change whatever's habitual. And I don't chalk Anthony Rizzo up as a dirty player. I mean, I think guys, I don't like the Cubs, but it's hard for me to like sit here and justify. Yeah, Anthony Rizzo's a dirty player. Now I don't think so.
No, I mean, if Anthony Rizzo's a dirty player, then technically so would every other baseball player to ever don an MLB uniform, because everybody at some point has done something to try and help, you know?
Yep, totally agree. So for me, really, this is not, I know other people are still heated about it. For me, I'm like, no, it's baseball, man. And go ahead.
I think it's rich for the Pirates too to be climbing up on their soapbox, because about a year and a half ago, Sean Rodriguez slid into home plate in an attempt to break up a double play, and he was a good 3 feet off the plate as well. It's just that the Reds catcher stepped far enough away that he didn't get knocked down. But
got his foot clipped though in the same way that Rizzo came in and clipped Diaz. It just didn't affect him as much as it did.
And everybody does it, and it's highlighted because it was at home plate and because 2 runs scored.
Right.
If it had been a bad throw, but it had been contained and no runs had scored, it wouldn't have been nearly as big a deal. But at the time, it was 3-0, and it ended up blowing out the game because it went to 5-0, and then all of a sudden, the game turned into a blowout. And I think that's why everybody paid attention to it.
Yeah. So I think the only max penalty that comes out of that, even if they would have called it, if they would have called it an illegal slide, to begin with would have been, okay, runners out, it's a double play, end of it. There's no people talking about suspensions and fines. Unless it's so like devious, unless spikes are up, I just don't.
Which they weren't. And I turned on MLB Network the next morning to kind of get the guys take like D-Row and those guys on in the morning. And I can't remember who said it, but he's like, a little bit of theater going on there. This guy should have played soccer. So
the catcher, yeah.
I have to say, I found it interesting that in a lot, whether it was ESPN or MLB Network or Fox Sports, whoever, the players, the guys who had played the game, had no problem with the play.
No,
yeah.
All the stat heads, all the talking heads, like Brian Kenny, who think that they know better, who all had a problem with this play after the fact.
Shredder boy, right?
Yeah, they all had an issue with it. And one of the best takes that I read, and this again was from Doug Glanville, he said, "You have 0.2 of a second to make a decision. You have 0.2 of a second to decide whether or not you're going to swing that bat. If you hesitate, it's a strike, because you're either going to take it or you're going to swing and you're going to miss." Anthony Rizzo had 0.2 of a second based on all of the information that was in front of him to decide what he was going to do with that slide.
Mm-hmm.
Hesitated, who knows what happens? Maybe something worse happens. Maybe he ends up running into the catcher. Maybe he ends up taking a later slide and does actually injure him. He had a very short period of time to make a decision. And everybody who's grabbing one frame from that slide to show how far out he was is neglecting the fact that his slide started about 5 feet before that. It's really rich to hear that from people who have never played the game.
Well, and also, I mean, after the game, the Pirates coach actually came out and said that, is this open season? If this is how the game is going to be played, we can do that too. Do you think that played into what Musgrove did at second base today?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but before we talk about the Pirates manager, I want to know, does he have the biggest jowls in baseball? Yes or no? Go around the table. Adam, start with you.
Yes, absolutely.
Elliott.
Yeah, agreed.
Pete.
No, Bartolo Colon's jowls are bigger.
Damn it. You took my vote. You took or it was Jim Lefevre.
Ooh.
Yeah, that would be a good one to put side by side comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah. You pull up the images, we'll post them. But Colon's going to be a hard one to beat. I love that guy. So you saw a big sexy pitch. I'm jealous. I've never seen him pitch. All right, guys. So shifting gears a little bit. Pete, can't hear you.
I said it doesn't look like he's trying at all.
No?
No.
He's so good though. That weight is power. And why,
Absolutely.
It's not fat, it's power.
It's power.
That's right.
It's all power.
It's all potential energy, not kinetic.
So this was a big day for Cardinal Nation, and the fact that we've had a pitcher who's been out about 15 months from Tommy John surgery, who's, it's almost commonplace these days when a top pitching prospect comes up at some point in time, they might as well just schedule a Tommy John surgery. But so Anthony Reyes clawed his way back. I say clawed his way back. I mean, he went through the minor leagues very, very fast and really kind of unchallenged at one point in time. And I didn't realize this, but there was a game. I'm not sure if this is maybe you remember this, Adam. I don't know if it was Springfield or Memphis. He set one of the league records by striking out 9 players in a row. And I think it was Memphis.
Yeah.
AAA. Yeah. AAA too, right?
Yep.
Which is, I don't care what league you're in. If you're able to do that, that's kind of eye popping. But so he made his debut today, a little bit tampered down by the fact that baseball and Facebook kept it off of every other channel that people are used to watching, and it ended up on Facebook. So me personally, I'm at work, so it didn't affect me, but I did tune in to it briefly during a meeting when I should have been paying attention.
I saw that when I turned it on this afternoon. It says, you and Ron are watching the Cardinals right now.
Probably when I had it. Yeah, but I look down and all I see is hearts and thumbs up and mad faces and shit floating around with all the comments. I'm like, how in the hell can anybody watch this game on their phone and actually pay attention to the nuances of this game?
You can turn it off. That's actually what I had to do.
Basically, you're layering Twitter over your face. You're trying to see through a Twitter screen curtain and trying to watch the game beyond it. And so I don't know how people do that. I mean, I know they're trying to appeal to a younger generation. You're showing a game, though, in the middle of the afternoon between two Midwest teams, let's be honest. And the Cardinals and Brewers don't have a heated rivalry. I mean, they did for 1 year, in 2011, right, with T. Plush. Remember him? What was it? Niger Morgan. That was fun. Threw his chewing tobacco at Chris Carpenter. I had my money on Chris Carpenter to kick his ass, but I digress a lot. But this whole Facebook thing, I mean, maybe it catches on. Maybe there's a few more games that get added year over year, but to me, it's not for me. And I think it took away a little bit from Reyes making a debut, because there's a lot of people that just didn't have access to it.
Yeah,
I can tell you right now, my grandparents wouldn't have been able to watch it.
I think at one point there was like 55,000 people watching it. So it
got up to like 68 at the end of the game.
Did it?
Mm-hmm.
And of all games to have carried on Facebook, Alex Reyes' return.
Well, I'm pretty sure this is on the calendar like before the year ever started. But
you would think that they would do something to address that.
Yeah, or not. Maybe they say he's making his debut, so it's a non. I mean, you say it's a world televised game, right? Because it's Facebook, but you're going to get a lot less viewers when it's not on Fox Sports Midwest or ESPN or something else like that. So, but anyway, so let's talk about the game a little bit. I don't know if you caught any of it, Adam, highlights, because you're out on the West Coast, and I know what that's like, right? Most of the times those games are halfway over or over by the time you get home, and you're editing. So I don't know when the hell you watch anything right now.
No. So I did watch the game today.
Okay.
Watching the Cardinals play baseball is like going to the opera. You really don't know if you're going to like it or not, but you got to go.
Yeah.
Because you buy the tickets, right? You buy the tickets, you're going to go. But, I mean, the Cardinals offense has been the story this year. I mean, the pitching has been phenomenal. The bullpen has shown chinks in the chain, but for the most part, they have Jordan Hicks. They have Bud Norris stepping up, prior to the hiccup that he had a couple nights ago. But,
yeah.
I mean, the offense is the problem. Like with the Cubs are doing really good. Both you can't even compare the lineups. The Cubs lineup compared to the Cardinals lineup is a joke. If we had a lineup, the way that they put out there, and it's the way that they put them out there, they have set guys. I mean, you look at the Houston Astros, you look at the Dodgers last year. The teams that go to the championship to win the series, they have set lineups. They have the rotations, and we have our rotation, or at least a glimpse of it, but we don't have a lineup. We're still missing that bat. Ozuna was supposed to do it, but without having Yelich and Stanton sandwiched in between them, clearly it's not helping.
Yeah, and that's been my theory with him this year, and that was my worry even going into it was, when you have and not just Yelich and Stanton, you talk about Bohr,
yeah.
Who's the Real Muto, the catcher, and you had D. Gordon last year too, right? So there's a lot of working components around him, and he was a cog in the wheel, and he wasn't expected to be the spoke like they need him to in St. Louis. So I had not surprised that we're seeing an impact on that. But, when you really, Adam, did you think last year, wow, we're going to go into this year with Jose Martinez as our 3-hole hitter?
No, I was hoping Matt Adams,
Yeah, he would have looked pretty good right now. But you're right. I mean, they're missing two people somewhere in the middle of that order that can produce consistently, and you can pencil them in every night. They've just been missing it for so long that it creates problems everywhere else. For every other facet of the game, it creates problems. So what kills me though? Oh shit! Here I go, guys. Headlines like today even saw it. Battle of the bullpens. Well, why is it? Why is it a battle of the bullpens? It's because your damn offense can't score. You can't score. You can't rely on them to score. They can't put the bullpen in a good situation when they take over. They're always like, margin for error is so thin that you can't rely on these guys to be rock solid, all of them. And Matheny uses as many as he can. Matt Bowman's actually warming up right now, and he's going to be out for a while. But you know what I mean? You're right. It's the offense has been the most consistent problem they've had for 2+ years now, and I give them credit for acquiring Ozuna, but they didn't get anything to go around him.
Well, I mean, they went after Stanton, and clearly Stanton had a no-trade clause, which is why he wasn't able to come to St. Louis. Now, had he not had the trade clause, it probably would have been different. We'd be looking at Stanton in the lineup, but we're not. We're looking at Ozuna in the lineup, and Ozuna doesn't have the pop and the type of bats that he had in his lineup, which I think I mean, jumping ahead here, the Cardinals have to go out and get a bat. I think they'll go out and do Donaldson, even though he's only hitting like 236 with 5 home runs and 13 RBIs and is getting injured. I think you have to go for Machado because the Cubs are going to go after Machado. And if it's not Machado, it's going to be Bryant's best friend, Harper. So the Cubs are going to be setting themselves up for next year. And if the Cubs go out and get Bryant, or let alone Machado, or somehow in some god-awful alternate universe, they go out and get both. It's the Cardinals aren't doing enough to stay pace. I mean,
no,
Milwaukee's doing good, but I don't think Milwaukee's going to be able to keep it up. Eventually, everybody has injuries. Everybody goes through droughts, and it's going to be the Cubs or the Cardinals to basically lose, especially if they stay around.
Yeah, I could see the Cubs if that were to happen. And you're right, it is an alternate universe, and it's a bad universe. None of us want to go there. If the Cubs actually acquired Machado, retained him, and then acquired Harper, they would transition quickly to how we all feel about the Dallas Cowboys, the most hated team.
But they are willing to spend the money. The Cubs with Theo, I mean, they're willing to spend the money, and the Cardinals just haven't spent money in a long time.
No, totally agree. And then there's the other factor, which I want to talk about this now that you've went into it, because it was a question that we're going to address actually on tomorrow night's show for Cardinals Nation 24/7. But might as well get your opinion on this, Adam.
Sure.
Big free agents. The Cardinals' formula in the past had been, they traded for guys like Jim Edmonds, Mark McGwire, Scott Brolin, Matt Holliday, and they're able to get them in St. Louis for a period of time and then able to retain them. Not the case anymore. At least it doesn't seem like the case anymore because they don't possess that winning dominant culture that they had for so long. So what's your take on that? Why do free agents not covet
Russa in the dugout, or Dave Duncan? They're missing some guys that players want to come play for. And I think, I don't know, I can't speak for players around the league, but I mean, you can just look at the players that have opted not to come here, from David Price to, other players who just don't want to play in St. Louis. And I don't think it's St. Louis necessarily. I think it's just the culture and the lack of winning has really hurt them in trying to get players to come and play for them.
And when you're talking about culture, in the clubhouse, in the dugout, I know the last couple of years when you pan over, it was really it's kind of a funeral home, to be honest with you, in the dugout. And so I do look at Mike Matheny and the culture he's created. He was a really good replacement for La Russa because he knew the Cardinal culture. He knew the way of doing things, and he inherited a team, that was a totally La Russa team. So for that period of time, it really worked. But since they've transitioned a lot of those guys, veterans out, new ones in, it is a different culture now. So Mike doesn't have the talent that he inherited. No. And that culture there has I think it's degraded year over year. And I agree with you. So I think that has a lot to do with why guys just aren't excited about hearing about St. Louis these days, or being traded to them or signing with them. So I think they've got an uphill battle. They have to reestablish themselves before that trend turns around. But back to Alex Reyes. So what you saw from him in the early innings today was a lot of electric stuff. But I think he experienced some stress that he hadn't felt in those minor league outings for obvious reasons, right? He's facing lesser talent. And he's facing Milwaukee that still has a pretty good offense, one of the better ones. And so he extended him out a few innings. He's not used to, going 20 or I think he went 1 inning, 30 plus pitches. And so I'm not surprised that he didn't get past 5. They took him out for precautionary reasons because his velocity dipped a little bit. I chalked this one up. I don't know any different. I think that they probably just, his velocity dipped. He extended a couple innings, that more pitches than we'd like to see, and we're just going to pull him back and see how he feels tomorrow. So what did you see today?
Absolutely. I saw, I wouldn't say dominant, but I would say that Alex Reyes pitched as well as he could after coming off of Tommy John and going through the, just fast forwarding through AAA and the minors, because look, he should, right? He should do those things. When you're looking at a guy that you expect to be the top of your rotation or a potential ace, you want to see him dominating against lesser talent. Then when he gets to the big leagues and he's facing one of the more dominant offenses right now in the lineup that has, Kane, Yelich, Thames when he's healthy. I mean, just all around, they're a good defensive team, which they made a couple of mistakes tonight, but they're also a very talented lineup. So Alex Reyes looks good. I mean, 4 innings pitched, 73 pitches, 42 of them, I believe, were strikes. I mean, I don't think they should have pulled him unless I'm more worried now. Is there something really wrong? Is he injured? Did they really pull him because it's precautionary, or did they pull him because something might be wrong and he's going to go back on the DL? Because if he does, then it's a much bigger problem.
Yeah, well, I would definitely be worried then. I think that they've been patient this long, that when they saw a dip in velocity, they're like, "Wow, we're not taking any chances here." He said his arm felt more tired. He said not necessarily a dead arm. There was no description he used for it, but he said his arm he felt some fatigue in his arm. Yeah. So we'll just see how that news shakes out this week. But yeah, I want to talk about the Cardinals rotation here in a little bit. But before I get to that, guys, you had a little bit of a scare, and maybe you guys are still scared about Yu Darvish. Had an MRI, no structural damage, but what are you hearing up in Chicago about your new starter?
Sounds like he's probably only going to miss one more start. He'll be right back in the rotation. No structural damage, nothing to be concerned about. It doesn't sound like anybody's worried about it. It just basically needed a rest. And what was it, Elliott? I think they said he's going to start a throwing program probably on Friday.
Yeah, it was a bit hairy because the last 24 hours there was conflicting reports coming out of the Cubs camp, and at first after the MRI they said they were still waiting for the doctor to review the results, which a lot of times is they're going to look for a second opinion, or they are getting a plan together before they come out to the public to kind of figure out what they're going to do. I thought there was going to be bad news coming out of there. Was happy to hear that it was just tricep inflammation or tendonitis. Not sure which they said.
If I told you it was Lovie Smith who delivered that injury report, how would you feel?
I would not believe a damn word coming out of their mouths.
I would have been far more concerned if it was John Fox delivering that. I would have immediately known that actually Yu Darvish's arm had actually
fallen off.
And
we were looking for somebody to sew something on.
It'd been ripped off by a Lake Michigan shark.
They're out
there.
Dr. Frankenstein to sew it back on.
Yeah.
Sorry, Adam, you don't know this. We're all Bears fans too. When I grew up, I didn't have a football team, so we're all Bears fans, and you know how our lives are now.
Yeah, unfortunately, I grew up in the era where we had the Rams, and now.
Oh yeah.
On how I should feel about it.
Well, they moved to your backyard, man.
I know, and they're good, so it's kind of double whammy.
Mm-hmm. Right. So Yu Darvish, you guys aren't too concerned.
No, actually, the concerning thing came out today. Although, the concerning thing, bit of news that came out was that Carl Edwards is going on the DL for some shoulder pain.
Yes.
It's hard to tell whether that's precautionary, like this is, or if there's something to be worried about. But the optimistic take is the Cubs learned from what the Dodgers did last year, and they're taking advantage of the 10-day DL to get some of their pitchers who are probably going to be more heavily used some additional rest throughout the year by his shoulder's a little sore. Sounds like a DL stint. Why don't you take 2 weeks off, Carl? Rest up.
Right.
At the end of the year.
Yeah, and I like the move because of how used the Cubs bullpen has been in this first part of the year. They've had some really deep games, some really late games, just a little bit of crazy travel. So I like this move. I also like seeing Mazzoni come up and getting some innings in too. I think Edwards will be fine when he comes back. He just said he felt some tightness, and so I like the move. Disappointed he's gone because I love seeing Thickberger come in and just throw the heat, but get him some rest.
Yep.
I think everybody's bullpen is being overused this year. If you go back and look at just half the bullpens in the MLB right now, you go back just 1 year on the top relievers of this year from last year, they're all projecting to go way over the innings that they did the year previous. So, eventually injuries are going to happen, or fatigue, or people are just going to get tired, especially over 162 games. And I think we're only 53 games in, and a lot of the relievers are being overused in these closer games. It's going to cost a lot of teams down the run.
I think you need to look at the average innings that starters do nowadays, right? I have no doubt you're going to see fewer than you did a decade ago, if not more. So obviously your bullpens are going to be taxed more and more. The super bullpens that started with, kind of like Kansas City and Cleveland, all the math and analysis that goes into matchups. I mean, yeah, guys do. And then you have managers that tend to go to the same guys all the time and overuse them. You can look at Matt Bowman with Mike Matheny. That was his guy he would call on constantly. And so, the lifespan of a middle reliever these days is probably comparable to some NFL positions where, it's 3 years and, they disappear. Mitchell Boggs, one of our guys, right? Came up, was pretty damn good. Gone. Kevin Segrist, point to another one. You see it more and more where, you're a middle reliever, you show some reliability, it's about a 3-year lifespan, it seems like.
Yeah.
Andrew Miller's even showing some wear and tear this year for Cleveland. So,
and without him, that bullpen is looking very, very
human.
Average. Yeah.
Very, very human. Cardinals rotation, Adam. We've got, now that we have Reyes back, we think, right? Results pending this week.
Yeah.
Now that we have him back, the question really comes, you've got Waka, Michaelis, Reyes, Flaherty, and you have Martinez. He's going to make a start in Springfield, and then you assume he's going to be back.
Right.
Gant, I think Gant has remained up too.
Yes.
But Martinez, when he's healthy, when he's ready to rejoin, who's out in the rotation?
I mean, I've been hearing a lot about that floater, a possible 6 rotation, a 6-man rotation without calling it that. Maybe having a 4-man rotation and then having every 5th day those last 2, maybe like a Flaherty and Reyes, to watch their innings. You could probably see them getting every other 5 games a start, and then possibly forcing them into being a reliever if the game gets out of control one way or the other. I mean, but right now with the way Weaver's pitching, Weaver hasn't pitched bad. None of the pitchers have really pitched bad, and that's the problem. It's the offense that has been struggling. And when you look at pitchers giving out quality starts like the Cardinals have, where else can you look except the lineup and say, look, what you went out to do, what you went out to seek to do by getting Ozuna, hoping Carpenter would be the number 3 hitter, it doesn't work. And there's nothing wrong with the rotation. They could go through. If Reyes is healthy, then you got to put him in. And then realistically, it's probably going to be Flaherty as the odd man out, unless Weaver gets hurt and gets put on the DL.
Yeah, and that's what I know that Jeff Gordon and Benjamin Hockman had been talking about earlier this week, and that was what to do with Weaver. Is Weaver that guy that's going to? You had mentioned Reyes and Flaherty. Is it more likely to be Reyes and Weaver, where you watch their innings, put one of them in as an extended bullpen role for a week, stagger those guys. When they get all these guys healthy and at full strength, it's going to be a good problem to have that a lot of teams wish they had.
Yeah.
Now, talking about that though, you still have John Gant. God, I almost called him Ron Gant. You have John Gant and you have Austin Gomber, who's having a really good season for Memphis. You've got an arm or two here. Injuries are always a concern. It's never a problem to have pitching depth. But do you see, out of all these guys you see here, obviously there's some untouchables. Do you see any of them as being a component or a piece that would bring in something that the Cardinals need? We both keep alluding to offense. We know that's where we're both going, so let's just cut to it right there. We know the Cardinals got to do something.
Donaldson. I mean, you look at everything the Cardinals do, it would be shocking to see Machado in a Cardinals uniform. I'd be happy to see him in the Cardinals uniform, but it's going to be for the rental. So if you think you can win this year with the pitching you have, and you're like, the only thing we need is a bat, and you put Machado in there with Ozuna, and then, maybe that allows Fowler and Carpenter to have better at bats and to get a little bit more aggressive earlier in the pitch count, as opposed to holding back and waiting for a better pitch.
Well, and Tommy Pham, for all that matter, right, trying to carry the team on his shoulders from time to time.
And he's done for a long time, up until the last 3 or 4 games where it's finally come.
Which apparently he's dealing with eye issues now again.
Yep.
I know, that's a bummer, man. I mean, that's
and Ron, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. love Tommy Pham, but the one thing that he hasn't been able to prove his entire career is an ability to stay healthy.
Right. And that's what you really feel for the guy, because, at full strength when he's on, he can help carry this team for weeks at a time. But when he has issues, it really shows. And Adam, I think you're thinking the same thing. If they don't have him, you have DeYoung out and Molina. Look at the supporting offensive cast you have around a guy like Reyes making his debut. It looks thin. Yeah. It looks thin. It looks like they really have to have an explosive inning to put runs up on the board, because they're not going to sustain an offensive attack for 9 innings. That's not capable of doing it.
I knew it was going to – I mean, after the first score, I was like, this is going to be a one-run game. And I feel like looking into the past, it's going to be the same thing. We're going to end up on the short end of the stick by 1 run.
Yeah, so many games have been like that too.
Over the last 3 years.
Yep.
I mean, man, you win half of those 1-run games. Half of it is Matheny making certain choices, throwing Bowman out there night after night. Picking the right guy, or Tyler Lyons, lefty on lefty.
Right.
One pitch over the wall.
Yeah, and Brett Cecil looks like maybe one of their worst signings ever under the Mozeliak. I guess you call it John Gersh. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the hell Gersh does.
Nobody does. I don't think he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. He unfortunately, he could be set up as a fall guy here. They replace him, which would be who knows?
That'd be sad. Oh, it's Gersh's fault.
Right. Well, then get out from in front of the camera and let him have some of the spotlight, right? If you want to make him the fall guy. But thank you. Is that the signal that we're almost done?
No.
Okay. So this has been a little Cardinal heavy, guys, but other Cub tidbits that you guys are burning to talk about.
Tonight's game was kind of meh. All the action was last night with the slide, and you had Victor Caratini getting sent down. Not happy about it, but it was a move that they had to make because they had to get him and Jimenez up to the club, because he has a rule in his contract that if he doesn't make it, then he can go looking for other teams to get traded or to sign with. So it sucks, but part of baseball. I know, Carantini he understands why they had to do it, and he has options, but he's not happy about it. But at the same time, he's going to get the at-bats that he hasn't been getting, because Contreras has pretty much been in nonstop lately. So
the Cubs lose a close one tonight, 2-1.
Yep. 1-for-6 with Risp. 11 men on base. Just a offensive night that was slow. I mean,
sounds like a Cardinals line.
Your best batter out there tonight was Jason Hayward, who went 3 for 3 and is now batting 256.
And you would take that, right? If you knew he would bat 256 for the remainder of that contract that he's not opting out of, guys. Sorry, you guys know that. No. You would be like, okay, fine, lock it in right there, right? If you could lock in that average year over year at 256, you'd be like, done.
Bat with his glove, yeah, you take
absolutely. Yeah. So you had a lot of offers tonight. You had your main guy. I mean, you had Bryant, Rizzo, Schwarber, all offer tonight. So
guys, I want to take it here, maybe to round us out tonight, because we were talked about Machado a little bit. Adam brought that up earlier. So there was a headline. I was trying to find it here. I can't find it, but it says it may come down to between St. Louis and Chicago, not the White Sox. that are the likely bidders for his services this year. So let's just I want to get the Cubs fan perspective on this one here, because Pete, at one point in time you thought that might be more likely. Now let me go back, so I don't remember the exact conversation. Did you think it was more likely a trade and sign, or just a sign in the offseason over Harper even?
Yeah, free agent target.
Yep. So all the chatter that's happening now, where would he fit in with the Cubs right now. Obviously, Russell would have to be part of that deal, I'm guessing.
You have to deal Russell for him. And again, that's why I don't see it happening, is because you have no guarantee that he's going to stick. But you'd fit in beautifully. You put him in, you swap him for Russell, and you slide him right into what, the 3, the 4, the 5 spot. I mean, take your pick. He could hit anywhere in there, and just lengthen that lineup even more. It'd be crazy. And he would make them. You wouldn't lose that much defensively either.
No, I mean, Russell is actually one of the best defensive shortstops in the NL right now, and has been. But bringing in the Machado potential is kind of what we were all thinking that Russell would be eventually, and it just really hasn't panned out. I don't think the Cubs sign him this year. I think if anything, it's going to be a free agent signing at the end of the year or for next year. Yeah. I do not see them unless it's a trade away with an extension, which Machado won't do, but who knows? I don't think it happens this year.
So, from my perspective on the Cardinal side of this, you guys have already heard me talk about this before, that the likelihood of retaining him is probably the biggest barrier. If there's no window to negotiate an extension, which, he's a Boris client, right, Pete?
Machado?
Yeah, is he? Okay, so we'll check up on that. But I don't care who he's a client of. The advice is going to be from the client. Most likely is going to be no, file for free agency. Let's see what kind of dollars are out there. We know the teams have been they didn't expend their salvos last offseason, anticipating a Harper, Machado being available. So we know that that money's being kept aside for guys like that. So the in-season re-sign is highly unlikely, and I think that's going to be one of the biggest barriers St. Louis is going to run into. I certainly think they have the people to deal to make a trade happen, but I think with the being unlikely that they're going to be able to retain him for reasons we've already discussed. Plus, he's likely to hit free agency. I don't see the Cardinals going there. If they did for whatever reason, if they decided, hell with it, we're going to get him in here. We're going to try to let him experience the fan base, the packed stadium on a Tuesday night and see what he thinks about all this. Let's just go for it. What the hell? Who's expendable, Adam, in your mind? Like, who do you think the targets would? Who do you think Baltimore would be asking for, and who are the Cardinals willing to part with?
Right, absolutely. I would say Gant, Weaver, and Jerko. I mean, I heard Morosi on the Facebook Live cast of the Cardinals Milwaukee game, and he was talking about how Machado is definitely on their radar, as he should be. Would they go for a Jerko, a Gant, and a Weaver? Weaver, yeah, he's got the potential, and I think Gant's shown that he's hovering right around something that he could do, but I don't know. Out of those three guys, I mean, look, if you could trade Jerko, Weaver, and Gant today,
I would do it.
Yeah, I mean, why would you not? What's holding him up? So clearly that's not what it's going to take.
No, it's going to take more than that, right?
Honestly, why not Gomber? I mean,
well, that's a name that's floating, because right now you have, let's just say the 5 starters are going to stick. You've got Martinez, you've got Waka, Michaelis. You have him this year and next year. Flaherty to me is an untouchable. So is Reyes.
I say Helsley.
There's another name I didn't even think about tonight.
Hudson. Hudson's doing really well down in the minors.
Mm-hmm.
They have what it takes, and I think we're looking at this the wrong way. I mean, look at what the Cubs did when they won the World Series. What did they go out and get? They traded for Chapman because they said, look, this is the guy that's going to get us a championship. They had the lineup. They had the rotation. They needed a guy to close out games. The Cardinals have the rotation. The Cardinals have the guys to close out games, not so much in the middle, but from the beginning and the end, they have that figured out. Their lineup is for shit. Sorry. But
you don't have to worry about it on this show.
It's completely crap. So if you can get Machado, even if it's a rental and all you have to give up is maybe 2 prospects and somebody on the big league roster that they just kind of hope will pan out, I do it 10 times and then again on Sunday.
Well, as long as it's from a place where they have a lot of depth, and definitely pitching it's always a risk because injuries always play a factor into this. That's another reason why I think GMs like ours have held on to pitching depth for a little longer than what they'd like because of the whole injury factor and how that can just totally screw up a year if you don't have that to draw from. But there's enough depth, and you've rattled off a couple names that weren't on the top of my mind tonight. But yeah, so I think they would have it there, but I think their concern is also maybe not as much average annual value what it would take, but I think it's just the likelihood of them being able to win this since they've lost out on a few recent players just kind of saying no thank you, but no thank you.
Right.
I think that plays a huge factor. And imagine this nightmare. You talked about an alternate universe. How about this one? St. Louis trades for him, trades away depth. Then the Cubs, the goddamn Cubs, sign him in the offseason.
That was in my head. I'm like, yeah, we get him and then they'll sign him.
Yeah. Horrible nightmare.
And don't forget, there is the wild card of Peter Angelos.
There is.
You could literally, I could see this happening. The Orioles offer Alex Reyes, Jordan Hicks, Tyler O'Neill, and Harrison Bader. And Peter Angelos says, nah, I don't think so. I'll just take that draft pick. That's fine.
Yeah, he's done such a magnificent job so far.
No, but going back to the Cubs real quick about what they need to do, or and Pete and Elliott, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not as big of a Cubs fan, but I do follow. Why wouldn't you guys be interested in like an Alex Colomé? Get another starter just in case. Alex Colomé probably isn't going to cost nearly what Machado would.
Well, as far as another starter, I think that they're probably looking to sign a big impact bat. If they're going to make that move, they're going to look to make a huge difference in their lineup. And so I think they're going to target, I think Machado and Harper are going to be 1 and 1A for them in the offseason so that they can make that kind of change and so that they can probably free up some pieces. We know that Hayward's contract isn't going anywhere unless they release him or unless they can make a trade like we discussed last week.
Bad for bad.
Contract. Hayward's not going anywhere. But if they sign Bryce Harper, Hayward's moving to center field. And what that may do is it either relegates Albert Almora to your super outfielder who plays all the positions and he's in there all the time, or you strike while the iron is hot after the fantastic season that he is having this year, and you flip him for something valuable, whether it's a depth arm that you can stash in the minors, some prospects, or another bullpen depth arm. I think that's the way that they're going to approach this offseason. Is they're going to.
What about Schwarber though, Pete?
What about him?
I mean,
he might be just as valuable too. But I mean, he is the best defensive outfielder in baseball. So
he's the best defender. Period.
No, he's not the best defender anymore.
Oh, did he fall?
From that lofty perch, but I think he's still the best outfielder in baseball. So,
all right.
So you can't just give that away.
If that guy gets a Gold Glove this year, Silver Slugger, I would have been. That's more likely, but a Gold Glove, I would just be beside myself a lot.
It's a Gold Glove, and Albert Almora Jr. doesn't.
What happened, man? I mean,
how that kid is going to react.
Yeah, seen stranger shit happen. All right, gentlemen. Adam, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been great having you on, and we got to do this again. And we got to we'll get you over to over at the other show too, where we don't have to talk to these Cubs guys so long.
It's a pleasure. You guys are great. Thank you. I love the show.
Yeah, Elliott. Pete.
Yes.
Let's go.
Okay. Before we go, just one note. Manny Machado, actually, his original agent was Scott Boras, but he switched over to Dan Lozano of MVP Sports Groups. Among his notable contracts that he has represented over the years, he negotiated Mike Piazza's then record 7-year, $91 million deal with the Mets. He represented Alex Rodriguez for a time.
I'll take Machado for 7 years. $1 million.
Reds, and negotiated Albert Pujols' $250
mother right there. Hate that guy.
So he's going to the Cubs. Just a chap Ron's ass. All right. Before I lead us out, let's just say that, Adam, if you're looking for extras in your next film, all three of us are available at the moment's notice. When we're not live, you can find us at teamofrivalspodcast.com, on Facebook at Team of Rivals Podcast, on Twitter at Team of Rivals Pod, and on Instagram at Team of Rivals Podcast. You can contact us at the show at teamofrivalspodcast.com, and you can contact Elliott on Twitter at
TOR_Elliott.
Beautiful. Catch us anywhere you listen to podcasts: iTunes, Radio Public, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, and Google Play. And as always, don't forget the Team Store on Zazzle.
Oh, you said it like a man that time. I liked it. Adam, is there anywhere that you want to anybody can follow you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter at Adam J. Maurer. You can also find me on Instagram at the Adam Maurer. And then also one thing that I really wanted to discuss tonight was for you guys to speak at a later date whenever you want, the DH finally coming to the NL. Like that's what I'm really curious about. I hear about it every offseason, but then it goes away, and it would clearly help both of our teams, but would also change the dynamics. Are you guys pro or?
I think that it's going to come once they expand. Okay. When they add two more teams, once they get things sorted out with the Reyes and all of that stuff, I think that when they add two more teams and they have to radically realign all the teams, they will add the DH, and the players will voice no objections whatsoever, and that will sail through. Because what it would require is if every AL team that you move ostensibly to the NL, they're going to lose a player. And they're not going to want to do that. They're not going to want to gut their roster. So I think that we're probably 5-6 years away from it coming. Because
that's hard to argue, Pete. It really is. It's hard to argue. I mean, me, I'm a National League guy. I like the style, but
they're not going back.
Yep.
That horse is out of the barn.
Well, the only possibility between two leagues, the American League is never going to lose a DH. Period. It's never going to happen. It's more likely that the National League adapts that than it is for the American League to abandon it. 100% sure. So, yeah, hard to argue, Pete. Pretty good point. Gentlemen, hope you all have a great week, and we'll be doing this again at normal time next week, right, guys? Or am I wrong?
Yes.
Thank God.
Absolutely normal time. No more special events. Absolutely.
No more movie premieres.
Well, I am going to the Science Behind Pixar member viewing at the Museum of Science and Industry next Thursday night.
Okay, good to know. All right, Adam, thanks so much, man. We'll stay in touch.
All
right, gentlemen. All right, here we go.
Don't go away.